getting down to the wire on Gypsy. Stick around, we have lots to talk about.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AFTERBUZZ TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
Get your lighters out. Or your phone. Honestly, I never get tired of that song. How are you guys tonight?
Great.
Good. I like your jean jacket.
Oh yeah, I like yours too.
Yeah. I didn't get the memo.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
Sorry about
Awkward.
that, Karina.
You missed the memo.
I know. I didn't get the text. Apparently, you guys have a.
Yeah,
text
I'm
by
sorry.
yourself.
You weren't invited to that group text. I'm sorry.
It was Gypsy Jean night.
Oh, great.
Oh my gosh. Guys, I'm really sad that this is like our second to last show of Gypsy, but I've been having the time of my life, so why don't you guys introduce yourselves for the second to last time? We're not done yet.
My name is Karina Vargas. You guys can find me everywhere on Twitter and Instagram at KarinaXVRGS.
And my name is Rachel Goodman. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Rach Goodman or on Facebook at Rachel Ann Goodman.
Yes, and I am Oliver Drennan. Find me on all social media platforms at Ollie Dreamer. Is there anyone in the chat currently?
Well, I'm going to give a shout out to hubby Joe. That's my husband, Joe.
Hey, Joe.
Hi, Joe. Thank you.
Does he go by hubby or Joe?
Sometimes both.
Okay. But thank you guys for anyone who's tuning in to us live or not. But give us a like, subscribe to us on iTunes or on YouTube as well. So yes, general thoughts on what just went down on Gypsy, guys. What are you guys? Are you? The show's giving me anxiety.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I have to say there was a lot of sex,
Ah.
but it was pretty interesting, and I especially love episode 7 and what they did with it.
Me too. Me too.
I just one word, temptation. Because there's so many temptations in, especially episode 7.
Episode
but
7.
even episode 8 has some pretty good.
The ending to let's get into it though. Episode 7, Euphoria. So there's a dramatic slow motion opening. As soon as I saw Jean, first off, Jean was rocking the leather jacket with the scarf. She looked like a blonde Jessica Jones. I was here for it. But that slow motion opening, she walks into the bar. The guys are looking at her.
Oh, yeah.
I already knew.
Everyone turns their
I was
head.
like, I was like, this is a dream, or you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew something was up, and then as soon as it cut, and then suddenly we saw the exact opposite happen, I was like, yep, that's reality, and obviously Jean/Diane wants everyone to pay attention to her.
Oh, especially when she was like, she brought up Sam to Sydney when she in a red dress, and I was like, girl, whatever.
Just the fact that they were doing it slow motion, I was like, she is not. This is not real.
Yeah, it's like in her mind that was the movie that was playing, and that's what she would have wanted, and it kind of says a lot about her character too, because there's been a lot of mention of, the show's called Gypsy, and there's a lot of mention of basically maybe getting tired of what you can have so easily, and it's just so fitting that Sydney would come in a red dress and they're not really quite kissing, and she's right there in front of her, but she can't have her. It's that, and I think that's exactly one of the things that drives Jean to be so into Sydney the way that she is.
Yeah. Lots of fantasy, lots of dreaming aspects. But me... Oh, were you saying something?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to say Madison says hi.
Hey, Madison.
Hey, Madison.
Madison is my friend. We used to work together at Cold Stone. Shout out to you, Madison. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Thanks, Madison.
Yeah, give us any comments, questions you have. I think Madison already watched the show. So a lot of my friends have already binged it. So But anyways, with this episode, it's only we only get 2 storylines. We have one side, we have Jean and Sydney, and the other side we have Alexis and Michael. So they're constantly flashing back and forth with one another, and I really enjoyed the transitions. I was talking to Rachel about this, how for example, this is skipping ahead a little bit, there was a scene in the pool, so they go down in the water, and then it goes to a wine bottle being poured, and I just loved how fluid it was. No pun intended, fluid. But yes, Scott, Alexis, Michael, they're on their trip to Texas, and of course Scott leaves.
Naturally.
He's always leaving Alexis and Michael alone with one another. So Yeah. First they play darts, but then it goes to truth or dare.
Yeah.
Of
And
course
then
it
what
does.
does Alexis ask?
Oh God, what does
She
she ask?
had to ask about, was it like, what would you do if you were single?
If you were single.
Yeah.
It's like, of course she would ask that.
What would be the first thing you do?
And he said he didn't know,
Yeah.
right?
And I just made it so awkward because he was like, I don't know. And then they were quiet for a while, and I was like, all right, cool.
Yeah, Michael had to have realized by this point that she was into him.
Yeah.
And I just think that if he doesn't think that anything's going on with Jean, which he might from the other episodes, but if he doesn't think anything's going on and he's trying to save his marriage, I don't understand why he would put himself in this place. And that when she says, hey, let's play truth or dare, why would she be asking that?
Yeah.
Like, there's only one answer to that question, and Michael just kind of went with it.
I mean, after that photo she sent him,
I know.
and I think that Michael, he wants to. He feels a little bit pressured, like with his friends, Daryl, who's seeing a 29-year-old.
Yeah.
But I personally think he really wants to, but he is all about image, as he said later in this episode, or I think it was the next episode, whatever. But he's definitely image conscious, so that's why he's holding back.
And I feel like also he likes the attention. Since he's obviously not getting so much of it from Jean, I feel like Alexis is actually giving him that kind of like, oh, I want you type of thing. So I feel like that's why Michael's kind of like going towards him, like doing stuff with him.
Plus, they probably have a lot more in common because of the fact that they work together. So just being in that environment every day probably puts them in a place where they have things they can talk about. Even if the conversation grows stale, worst case scenario, they can talk about work again.
Yeah.
So he probably, not only is this woman interested in him, basically throwing herself at him, but she works with him and she understands him more because of that. So I think it makes it very easy for him to go down that path. And but he just shouldn't have put himself in that position knowing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so while those two are over there playing truth or dare like a bunch of third graders, we have Jean and Sydney playing a little game of not even control. The game that they play, it's really funny because we have these characters, Alexis and Michael, who are completely controlled. They're playing this game that's controlled, whereas Jean and Sydney are playing this game about that there isn't control, basically, because the point of the game is it's like truth or dare, but you don't get a choice, basically. So I kind of like that playful thing that they were, Jean and Sydney were doing throughout their own game.
Yeah, it was interesting because it was kind of like, it added a little more of surprise and, but it just added more to it because...
Intention.
Yeah, because you would flip the coin and then whoever won would be the one who could ask or tell someone to do whatever they wanted. So they were playing almost like the more risque version of Truth or Dare.
Whenever it was Sydney's turn, I was like, oh God, what is she going to ask her to do? What is she going to ask? Like,
And she, honestly, her questions, I don't know, maybe it's because... to me, it wasn't as big of a deal as what Jean was doing. Like, Jean, to me, was asking the questions and saying to do the things that should be, the scariest. But because it's Jean and Sydney's asking her these questions, maybe it was worse for Jean in that regard.
Jean reveals a little bit about Catherine. When she talked about Catherine, she definitely has lots of animosity towards Catherine. I feel like Michael was all about Catherine, but she ended up when Jean and Michael got back together, she made him get rid of everything about Catherine. So she was hurt, but it also seemed like she was very controlling. And I think it's so funny, like I said, like those two characters, Jean and Sydney, they seem very controlling, whereas Michael and Alexis, they don't seem that controlling in like a relationship at least.
And it was interesting too the way that Jean kind of like said that it was more of like a torture, because the question was somehow like, oh, how would you kill somebody? And to her it was like, I would kill them with my mind. And like torture was a big part of that, especially with Catherine and stuff, and saying that when she told Michael to get rid of all the pictures and everything, that it was more of a torture, psychological torture towards Michael. And I was like, dang, that's deep.
We have a couple of comments in the chat too. So hubby Joe says, but he's trying to be a good husband. so he checks out the girl in the coffee shop. and then Madison says, but he's a good person, so guilt. I agree with both those things. Yeah, he's definitely the saner person between Jean and
What did you think?
Temptation. It's just temptation.
That's what the episode should have been. Temptation. The title. Euphoria. But what did you guys think of when? Because their game is getting the truth or dare game. It's getting a little bit more tense. What did you guys think of the pool scene with Michael and Alexis?
If he didn't know that she was into him, by now he should have gotten that point.
It did surprise me when he jumped in full on with his suit.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, Michael, you're kind of interesting.
I got scared. I thought he passed out or
So
something.
did I.
He fell in there, and I was like, oh my God, what happened to him?
Don't run near a pool. You're gonna slip.
I thought it was gonna be like turn into kind of a soap opera where suddenly he has to be rushed to the emergency room or something.
I would have loved that.
I was so worried.
We need some comic relief. Okay.
Out of this dark series.
My heart's like beating, like, oh God, what's gonna happen?
The way they showed it, though, I seriously thought the guy was having a heart attack because the way that they showed him, like, he did fall. They didn't show him jump. They just showed him going in.
And with a straight face and everything. And I was like, what just happened?
Wait, maybe he doesn't know how to swim. Like, what's the catch to this?
No, but the fact that he actually dared her to, like, oh, you have to jump in the pool. It's like, what do you expect from daring somebody to jump in the pool with wet clothes?
They were drinking a lot. I was like, dang, they can hold their liquor. Like, they need to give me some tips. They're pacing themselves.
They were drinking a lot, but they didn't seem that drunk.
Oh, yeah. Remember when he dared her to go, like, make drinks behind the bar?
And she did it. That was the best dare.
She did not put ice in those drinks, and I was really I was
like, all hot.
and warm.
See, okay. I could not believe that no one stopped her. All the people there, she just got away with it. Like, no one even said, like, you know, I don't know, no one even kind of looked a little. Even if it wasn't a bartender, someone just sitting in the audience, not the audience, someone sitting at the bar. Yeah, I would have looked if I saw some random person making drinks.
And I actually did see people like looking at her, so I'm like, why is nobody stopping her? Like, why? You're clearly seeing her do this.
Everyone just gets up and starts making drinks.
To help yourself, bar.
But after the whole pool scene, they end up going back to their room, you know. So we're waiting to see what happens there. But meanwhile, Sydney and Jean, they start making out. And I'm like, okay, yes, they're finally going to have sex. Because honestly, like, I want someone to have sex in this. Like, when they're building it up. But then they don't have sex. And Sydney wants to get high. Yeah. And I'm like, uh-oh. And a lot of the conversation is, in this episode with Jean, is like, whenever she's asking Jean, like, about herself, she's always, oh, so-and-so. I used to be. She's always talking about, like, oh, I used to be. So there's a lot of this character that we still don't know of her past life, and hopefully in the next 2 episodes we learn.
And that's kind of when we start to see why the show is called Gypsy in the first place. I think she even says during this whole exchange that some people just aren't built to be in monogamous relationships. And I think that's what this show all boils down to, is that there's this woman who felt pressured to marry a guy, even though she wasn't the kind of person who wanted to settle down with any one person.
Yeah, and I love the quote when Sydney asked her, like, what does she want, what does she like? And the quote was, I'm not going to butcher it this time.
You wrote it down.
Yes, I wrote those good quotes. If you focus so much on what you want, you should... oh, no, I butchered it.
I have it, actually. My God, I wrote it.
Okay,
it's like,
take it, Karina.
If you focus so much on what you should feel, you don't really know what it is you do feel.
Yes, and I think that's... I just love that quote so much.
I know. I loved it, too. I had to rewind it, and I was like, I gotta write this.
I don't know what I wrote.
I wrote it down, too.
Okay.
We're all good.
Here we go. Madison has a comment. She says, did anyone else feel worried when Diane was looking through Sid's medicine cabinet? Yes. Like, girl, she is going to hear you through that curtain. Yes.
Diane, whatever her name is, she's slick. Like, she, because at one point, she even got her phone. Remember that? And then, She deleted Sam's contacts.
And I couldn't believe
and
that.
And the messages.
Yeah, and Sydney didn't make a comment about that.
Later on.
Yeah. Because I think she flipped the phone so you couldn't tell that the light was on. So when she like brought the pizza and she like kind of slid it over. But I feel like that might actually be a like storyline, a small storyline in the next episode, because obviously Sam's number's not going to be on there.
Yeah.
But see, I don't get that. So Jean, like, she thinks she can just go and have her husband and her marriage and not end that. But then at the same time, she expects that Sydney's not going to be in contact with Sam. Like, it's just there's double standards across the board. So, yeah, I just didn't get it.
Sam,
just like that Sydney does. I mean, that Diane does want Sydney to just like get rid of all her connections, her past connections, and just focus on Diane when Diane's not even doing that.
Yeah. I was expecting something in the next episode or something to come up about, because I figured like Sam would like try to contact Sydney, but he's clearly not because he's busy with Emily. So maybe that's why, we didn't get any further information. But Jean gets super high. She starts hallucinating. She sees Sid and Sam getting it on. And then she actually sees Michael and Sid, like, and I was like, I wonder if this like is kind of representing like Michael and like Jean in a way. Like, what did you guys think of that when you saw that? Like, because it was that really stood out to me. Like, maybe she was thinking of seeing herself and Sydney with Michael, like the crazy side.
That's what I think too, because she keeps hinting that she used to be this other person, like Sydney. And we saw this scene, and I think maybe she sees Sydney as a younger version of herself. So it was really easy for her to envision her Michael sleeping with Sydney. So
yeah. And later on, there's lots of like jealousy like starting to unfold between or like a little hint of it, because she starts asking Sid about Sam, and Sydney thinks she's jealous. But then Jean thinks Sydney's jealous when Emily's brought up, who is the ex. Or not the ex.
Well, was the ex now.
Was the ex. Now is kind of like
they're
a lover again. So it's just, this show's a mess. It is messy.
So one thing I have written down here. So Sydney asks Diane about Michael, and she goes, "Why'd you break up?" And Diane/Jean says, "You."
Yes. Oh, I love that.
So I wonder if in Jean's mind, she thinks that even though they're not technically broken up, that, I don't know, in some weird way, she's like officially broken it off like inside her mind, like emotionally. So I'm just wondering if that's kind of how Jean is thinking here right now, even though, obviously she's lying, but it's,
I kind of feel like she's kind of thinking, because, when she talks to Sydney about her relationship with Michael, I kind of feel like Diane or Jean is already thinking that they're over, that their relationship can no longer be brought back, like they can't get together again, and I feel like mentally Jean is already like kind of done with Michael and is trying to like move forward with Sydney. But
it's just that Michael to her is kind of like baggage. That she's lugging around.
And her child too, Dolly. She won't even like even if she was going to lie about her husband, you would think that she would at least admit she has a child. But it's like she doesn't even want to admit that. She just wants to be a single woman going about and doing her own thing. And she wants to present this image to Sydney, just like she wants to present an image to everyone else. But it's, I don't even know anymore, because it's like she's definitely bored with Michael. And I feel like Sydney and Diane/Jean, they're the kind of people who also get bored with people. But I feel like in this one particular case, I think they've both realized that this is different, because they're basically the same person, and because of that, they might not get bored of each other.
Yeah, but I love what the quote you brought up about like what broke them up, but the part of you that's like me, that she used to be. So that was really like, oh man, it's beautiful. And then it's like we go to Matthew's little monologue about like him like with Jean. What did you guys think of that monologue? Because I have like mixed feelings about it, about how he was just like, I don't even know what he said, because it was just like.
Well, I have written down that one of the first things he said is that, was talking about Jean, when we first met, Gene was free-spirited. And I don't think he should have been, unless he was willing to cut off and break up his marriage, I don't think he should have been having this conversation with Alexis, of all people. But on the other hand, at least he was being honest. And maybe this was the moment where he finally realized that their marriage was no longer something that could work.
And I also felt that, like, when Michael was doing his little monologue, he was talking about, I don't remember, like, the exact line, but he was saying how it's like you try so hard to be strong for, like, the other person, and that's how he felt for Diane when she was, I guess, I don't know if she was falling apart. Like, that's where, like, the lines kind of get blurry. Like, what happened in their relationship that made it that much? Like, is it Catherine? And he even told Alexis a bit about Catherine, didn't he?
Earlier.
Or during that moment, wasn't it?
I believe so. But I know he did tell Alexis about Catherine, like, in past episodes.
But it was, like, back to back, too. So we were at Jean, and, and she was saying, I guess I just couldn't bring myself to commit to one thing for my whole life. I don't think everyone is built that way. Then we go to Michael, and he says, we talked about getting engaged, but the closer it got, she ran. She slowly checked out. Yeah,
because this scene really, like, this was one of those big, like, constant transitions over, like, it was, like, almost as if they, like, connected, and, well, they did.
They really did.
But, like, they were talking to each other almost.
Yeah.
And they were telling a story, like, I mean, they were, but it was really a standout in this episode for sure.
Yeah.
But Alexis and Michael, they don't have sex, and I was really surprised about that.
Was I.
They did not hook up.
We got it wrong.
I know. I was
but
like,
it seemed like,
I guess.
I mean, he was holding her hand. At that point, like, just go for it, dude.
I really thought they were. I really thought they were, but I give it to the show for, like, proving me wrong and surprising me, you know. So because he's a good guy. He's a little questionable.
Yeah. He's a good guy, but again, it's the things that are around him, aka Alexis.
Well, and he's married to Jean, and I mean, it's probably, I mean, obviously we've seen it hasn't been the easiest marriage, and she's not even the greatest wife, so I could see why he would emotionally check out, because he probably, you know, we even saw in the last couple of episodes, he knows that Jean's up to something, and so he can probably feel that she's emotionally checked out again.
Yeah.
So.
But it's just surprising. It really speaks a lot about his character that he's not acting upon, you know.
Yeah.
So he still really, really does care about Jean. So that's cool on his part. So props to you, dude.
We have a couple of comments. Madison says, I feel like Jean's gypsy life would be a lot easier if she didn't have a kid. I definitely agree, because that's where it gets iffy, is that there's a child involved, and this is just gonna, whatever happens in this scenario is just really gonna mess with Dolly. And that's what I think, like, if Dolly didn't exist and it was just her and her husband, it wouldn't really feel, I guess, so bad what she's doing, but because I mean, it would still feel bad, but not as bad. And but yeah, Dolly, she's not thinking about how all this is going to affect her daughter.
She's living in the moment for sure. She's not thinking about the future.
Yeah, and I also think that if it'd be a lot easier if she didn't have Dolly, but I think it'll also be easier if Sydney knew about Dolly. Yeah. And I kind of feel like it would kind of be like, obviously she's proud of Dolly. Obviously I'm not saying she's not proud of her, but I'm saying, like, it would be like as though she wasn't trying to hide Dolly as much. And because that's a big part of your life, a daughter, you know. And so even if you're playing all these mind games and everything, I think that should at least still be something like, okay, I have a daughter. Like, Sydney knows about Michael, so it's like, why can't she know about Dolly?
And the mature thing too, if you're gonna enter in a relationship with someone new, they should know up front that you have a child. That's a big thing to not know.
This episode starts coming to an end. Something that really, or before this, Jean, she tells Sydney not to F with her, and but Sydney says the rules don't apply in this situation, and so, like, they're heated. This scene is really tense, and I'm thinking, okay, well, they're not gonna hook up, and I've been waiting for someone to hook up, but lo and behold, they end up hooking up. So I'm like, yay, finally, sheesh, whew. So I'm glad that they finally sealed the deal.
finally, it took only 7 episodes.
Even though I would rather have had like Alexis and Michael to hook up in a sense. Like
I wanted both of them to hook up. Yeah.
So yeah, but whatever. It showed that Michael was a stand-up dude. But what was really interesting was that we saw Michael in the morning. He was getting out of his room, and he sees Alexis leaving Scott's room.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh.
I could not believe that.
Alexis, you were thirsty that night, girl. She wanted something.
I couldn't believe that because she didn't strike me as the type who would do that.
Yeah, me neither.
I just thought she really liked Michael. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, what? That made me rethink everything.
Yeah.
Me too.
I was disappointed in her. I was like, come on, Alexis. Dude, look,
now I'm thinking what her real intentions are.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
both with Michael or with Scott.
Yeah.
You know?
But like maybe she really does want to get with Michael, but she just wanted to bang someone that night. Like
I mean,
or
I don't
get
want
him
to.
jealous.
Yeah.
I don't want to like touch on the next episode at
Yeah.
all, but yeah, that's exactly what I think.
We're gonna
it is
get
now.
there for sure, because
I think she just wanted to make him jealous. I think she planned to come out of the room right when he was gonna.
But yeah, it's just really interesting. Like, she must have been like really calculated with that one, because like who would have thought, like who would have known that he would see her leave? You know?
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I mean, I think it could be calculated because didn't they have a flight to get to? So
Yeah.
maybe it was like.
Here's a theory. What if she told this other guy that she liked Michael, and she said, "Hey, do me a favor."
Oh, Scott?
Yeah, and maybe Scott knew, like, okay, well, we have a flight. He's gonna probably leave the room around X time, so why don't we do this?
Yeah, they didn't hook up.
They didn't hook up, and that it was
Okay.
a setup to make it look like they had hooked up, so that Michael would get jealous.
That's a good one.
Mm.
I would believe that. I would believe
Well,
that.
let's get into episode 8. Is there anything else you want to say about episode 7? No, we're good. Yeah, because I thought that it would end like crazy, but it really didn't end that crazy.
Yeah.
She just got a text from one of the moms about like, oh, I'll drop Dolly off. So that was basically the episode. So I was like, okay, because sometimes these endings are like,
Yeah.
This one actually ended on.
Yeah, it was kind of just like simple and clean.
Jean didn't pass out this
Yeah,
time.
she did not. Oh, and we still don't know why.
Yeah.
But someone was in the, hold on, I think I want to shout someone in the comments in the last episode. I'm going to butcher this name. Surwazanim in the comments. And Marisha Smid. I'm really sorry if I butchered those names. They said that maybe it was like a little thing of yogurt that was out while Tom was in like her session, and maybe he put something in her yogurt that she ate, and it was open. So shout out to you guys. Thank you for commenting. That's a theory. Maybe we'll find out later.
Yeah, that
I'm
would
over
make
here
sense.
thinking he stabbed her. They're more practical.
That'll show you.
He shot like one of those thingies, like in like a short.
Wow.
They're thinking more practical. I'm over here all in the extreme.
So I did not catch the yogurt thing.
I didn't catch it either.
But good eyes on you guys.
It makes sense too because she did see him first, and it was probably a hallucination, but probably because he's the cause of it.
Yeah, because I was surprised we didn't find out anything about that in these 2 episodes. But going on to episode 8, Jean and Michael, they're at a party, and they meet up with Alexis, and this is obviously after the whole everything that happened. But the relationship seems fine. After the party, they are smoking together.
Yeah.
So there's.
Did you catch in this party scene that Alexis gave Scott a look? They exchanged like a
I did
really
not.
weird,
Yeah, I did.
cryptic.
It was
We're
when
not-
she was looking at Michael too. Like she looked at him first, and then
I
Did
Michael.
I think
Yeah.
Scott knows the whole thing and that they didn't hook up.
And I feel like they're kind of doing that in order to get to Michael and like his perfect reputation, because that
Yeah.
kind of is something that happens.
Setting him
like,
up.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Scott could be jealous. His agenda could be to get him fired.
Maybe he wants his position.
Yeah.
Because I forget. Do we know if Scott like works under Michael?
I think he definitely
Yeah,
does.
I
I think
Okay.
Michael's one of the lead guys.
He's one of the top
Yeah.
dogs.
And we thought we had to worry about Jean. No, we have to worry about Scott and Alexis. But do they end up having sex?
Oh.
No, they don't have. We think
No.
that they're gonna have sex.
She says she's tired.
Yeah, and he says it too.
Yeah.
But she lied because she went to go talk to Sydney. Yeah.
Which says to me she's definitely checked out of her marriage
Yeah.
and she's on to Sydney now, like
Yeah.
actually wants to be with her.
Mm-hmm.
But she's not making the right choice to say, all right, Michael, let's have a talk and
during the phone call, she gives her an address too. She gives Sydney an address. And was that the address for her apartment?
Yeah.
And then
I think okay.
Yeah, it was her apartment, especially after the fact where
She
went and everything had like Diane, whatever her last name was.
Hart.
Diane Hart.
Yeah.
And it turns out that's her maiden name.
Yeah.
Hart. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So she goes to talk to Sydney, gives her last name Hart, which is, like you said, possibly her maiden name. And we come to find out that Claire makes progress and that she reveals in therapy that she's going to go see Rebecca. And so that's really nice. I'm like, okay, cool. Claire, her life's on track, kind of. But she reveals to Jean that she wants to have she wants to have a session with Rebecca, with Jean. And she's declining. She's like, no, like, I don't do it that way. But she ends up, she at first declines, but she ends up accepting it. So I'm like, oh, no, because those two, the mother and daughter, see her as two different people.
Yeah.
So I'm like, how is she going to get her way out of this one, Miss Jean?
I did have a feeling, though, that she was going to go to Rebecca and be like, you know what, you shouldn't talk to your mother anymore. Like, she's horrible for you type of thing.
And later in the episode, we find out that's exactly what she does.
But my question is, why is she going through all the trouble to kind of get into her patients' like lives and try to meddle in when at the end it's like she's not going to try to really help them out?
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm wondering where this storyline's going because, like,
how did she even find Rebecca? That's the creepy part. At least Sam, like, we can probably guess that he probably mentioned that coffee shop a bunch of times. But how did she find Rebecca, and why would she basically?
Where did she find her apartment, or
because she was running into her at the hair salon.
Yeah.
So it's like, how did she even figure that out?
She just
because
her mom talked about the blowout.
That she would always go every I don't know if it was Monday or something, and she would always get like her hair blown.
Her weekly blowout. So,
but I don't understand why. At least I can kind of get, not get, but like understand a little bit more that she'd be doing it with Sydney because maybe she saw herself in Sydney. But the fact that she would be doing this with Rebecca and all these other people, it makes no sense.
Yeah, it's really interesting, like, and questionable because where is this going? I'm wondering where this particular storyline, is it going to like cross over into another one? Because other than why is she doing this, getting so like into this relationship with her patient, but like, I'm just like really confused. I'm honestly really confused. I just don't know where it's going.
Yeah, because
how
is she gonna help her?
Other than like it looking good on her as a therapist of like having successful sessions with Claire, but it doesn't look like it's because the progress that she was trying to make doesn't look like it's being made anymore at this point. Yeah. Now that Rebecca cancels on Claire, and we also find out Rebecca's pregnant. So and she's going to Costa Rica, and Rebecca even says that before she becomes a mom, she wants to fully detach herself away from her own mom. So that's really bittersweet, I think. And
I think that's why she also agreed to this session with the therapist.
Yeah.
AKA Jean.
Jean.
Just because she wants to kind of like detach from her mom and is like, okay, I'm going to give this to my mom because this is what she really wants. And then after that, it's like, they'll finally make amends, or not even amends, because the letter that she wrote her was kind of like, I want to cut you out of my life type of thing. And I was like, well, at least she's trying.
Poor Claire.
Yeah.
Were there any comments that you want to share?
We don't have any Oh, you mean for me or the chat?
Either or.
We don't have any comments from the chat, but if you guys have anything to say out there, definitely let us know, and I will read them. I think in terms of Rebecca and. Yeah, I don't understand what she's doing, and I just feel like it's not going to end very well. I feel like even if, first of all, something's going to collide at some point.
Yeah.
But with Rebecca, it still can't end well because if she's asking to have her daughter come in on this session now, but who's to say that one day the daughter won't decide, all right, you know what, I changed my mind, I'm going to come to a session. And who's to say she won't do it without even asking first? Her mom will say, all right, let's do this, and they just show up together that day. So she's taking a real big risk doing this.
I feel like that's even a possibility now, because even if like Jean was telling her like, oh no, don't go and all this stuff, I still feel like, what if Rebecca's like, well, I'm not going to listen to Diane, she's just my friend, and she ends up going.
I just don't think it's going to end well with that storyline. But another juicy storyline is the whole thing with Alexis, Michael, and Scott. And we find out that, I believe it was Michael's boss comes in and he says, you know, that there's a rumor going around that Alexis and Michael hooked up. So at this point, I'm like, oh my gosh, like who started this rumor? Was it Scott or was it Alexis? And at this point, I'm thinking, okay, well, they're the only two that, you know. Maybe Scott. But I'm thinking, okay, maybe this might be Alexis. And then later on, Michael goes to confront Scott. And what? I'm like lost my track. What happens in it?
So Michael confronts Scott because he thinks he might be the one who mentioned something, I think. And basically Scott says, listen, you know, she didn't really sleep with me because she likes me or whatever he said, but she slept with me because she's in love with you. And they have this whole conversation where basically I think Scott says just to keep it under wraps so that no one finds out about it.
But Michael's mad because either way, it looks like it looks super shady on Michael and Alexis. And he's like, I don't know what to do. I can't fire her because then it looks like, you know, that we did it. And I can't, it still sucks keeping her because of this rumor. And, you know, Michael's so dependent on his reputation, so that's a really messy, this is a really messy storyline.
And doesn't he kind of think at first that it's her, and that's where his blame goes before he even, because he approaches Alexis like, what did you do? So it's really hard to say.
And she says she heard another rumor at like the lunch table with some other people.
Because she said that people kind of like saw it coming, or like because of the way that they talk and the way that they interact with each other.
And they went to Texas together.
Yeah, and I just feel like I still think it could be Alexis just because I feel like, okay, maybe Michael turned her down and that maybe got her mad or something and wants to get back at him for then later Jean to somehow find out with all the rumors.
I definitely think it was Alexis. Like, who else could it be?
Yeah, I'm leaning toward her too because I don't know that Scott, unless his agenda is to get Michael's position, which I don't know, I can't tell because he doesn't really seem like that's what he wants, but you never know. But Alexis, I feel like she'd have a really big motivation for doing this because, he turned her down and maybe she's not as mature as we're led to believe. I mean, Michael has, like, as we can see, he chose to be with someone like Jean, so maybe he doesn't always see that side of people that would be like a red flag.
And what if it isn't even them two?
Ooh, maybe it's someone else.
I know.
Melissa.
Catherine.
I was going to say Cameron. I'm like, who's Cameron?
Catherine's come back.
I mean, watch them shock us and be like, oh, it's neither Alexis or Scott.
Because the show, like, the show to me is being super unpredictable. I thought they were going to hook up. They didn't hook up. I'm glad they didn't because it's definitely getting a lot more interesting with them, with this whole scenario. But someone who's catching on to Jean is Lauren. And Lauren's like, girl, you didn't show up to my a cappella show. And I was like, but she's getting on to Jean. And she says something to Jean that she sees a lot of the characteristics that she saw in her ex-husband, Daryl, in Jean. And so she definitely is catching on to her about so many other things. She believes that, you know, she's having an affair. Jean's having an affair.
Yeah.
So, Jean, are you going to say something?
Well, I was just going to say that Jean ends up lying completely and makes it sound like Michael's the one having the affair.
Yeah, absolutely. And she's like, oh, I'm always on my phone because I'm talking to Michael. So she completely switches it. So this girl's good.
Yeah. She even
So many
said
lies.
the same thing that she was doing. She pinned it on Michael. So she was like, yeah, like the other night or something, Michael went inside the bathroom and he was like talking to someone. And I was like, you are such a liar.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then she pins it on like his assistant, Alexis. So she is good.
I don't know though. Like Lauren didn't really look like she believed her.
Yeah?
Yeah,
All
like
right.
I think she can read through it as a therapist and as someone who's been cheated on. But we have a comment too. Madison says, I think Jean feels that normal therapy and its boundaries aren't helping her patients, and she wants to try and figure out new ways to make them better. I agree with that.
I agree too, but she's like not doing a good job.
Yeah, she's not.
Not with this lying and stuff. It's she needs to be more control. You're supposed to be controlled, Jean. Like, what are you doing? You're messing everything up. But she goes to see Sid at work, and they end up like kissing or whatever.
Having like a little moment.
And I'm like, oh God. And they what's striking me about this scene was because they mentioned about like running away. And Jean's like, well, you have to have a plan. So I'm thinking, okay.
I thought she was literally gonna say,
it
let's
could
run
have been
away.
taking. That's definitely, I think that could possibly be foreshadowing. I mean, title of the show, Gypsy. What do Gypsies do? They go from place to place. So I'm thinking.
They never settle.
Yeah.
I also thought maybe it was like a fantasy of like in Jean's head, kind of like describing all these things that they could do together for it to kind of not really be something that could happen.
I definitely think those are. I can see either one happening because there's like we said earlier that there's shows based so much on fantasy. Allison reveals that she used again since the meeting, so that's really unfortunate. And she doesn't have anywhere to go. And I actually predicted this like 2 weeks ago that I was thinking, okay, this apartment that Jean has, she's gonna shelter Allison. So I was like really like I was like cool, like I predicted something right for once. So that's what she does, and I'm really happy that Jean did that because Allison, you don't want her with Tom because Tom's freaking crazy.
Yeah.
And I believe that she said that she used with him too. So I'm glad she's out of that situation. But Allison does some snooping. And she's bored, she goes through her thing, she finds a bunch of tapes. And this is where we reveal that Jean's maiden name is Hart. Through when she sees like a bunch of tapes, a collection of them, and they're labeled. And I'm like, oh my gosh, is this some like 13 Reasons Why?
Oh my God, that's exactly what went through my head.
I haven't even seen the show. Like, have you guys seen it?
I
haven't watched it yet.
Yeah.
That when they brought that out, I was like, 13 Reasons Why.
Yeah, I was
just
like,
like,
I agree.
Michael, this is your take. Oh
my God.
I haven't even seen
Mother.
Nancy. But also, this is jumping ahead. I'm just talking more about Allison. We don't know anything else that happens, but other than Allison's just like on a bed, and someone starts knocking at the door. This is near the end of the episode, and it's freaking me out. I'm like, oh, my heart's racing.
I think it's Sydney.
I think so
I
too.
was thinking it was Sydney too.
Yeah.
Is that how they ended the episode?
I don't
No,
know.
right? Oh,
no.
okay.
But yeah, I was like, okay, it's probably Sydney. It can't be Tom, but I definitely think it was Sydney because she gave her the address. So.
But I think
I was so
it
scared.
could be
It was just like.
Tom.
Boom, boom, boom.
I do think it still could be Tom somehow.
Yeah.
I mean,
It could be.
I
Yeah.
hope it's
just
not.
the way that he kind of figures out where Allison is always at. I'm kind of just thinking like maybe
She could have
he
even
could've gone.
told him.
Yeah, that too.
Maybe.
Because they never showed who
Yeah,
opened
she
it,
looked
like
through
who.
the
Yeah,
peephole.
but
I don't know.
they never.
But didn't they kind of show Sydney, and then they cut to that scene, and we heard the knocking on the door? So they kind of made it look like it might be her, but it could be Tom.
They're
Yeah.
trying to throw us off.
Yeah,
they are.
Yeah. The writers are good. We need to have some of those writers come in, okay? So Dolly tries to memorize her lines for Peter Pan, and it's really interesting seeing like the mother-daughter relationship and how Dolly's she tells her like she just really needs to be into her character. She needs to memorize everything. So it's just interesting how like Dolly's is acting, whereas Jean is also acting, but she's not doing a good job about it. So I don't know.
Yeah, and also during that part before Dolly even came into the room, Jean was writing everything that she had been telling Sydney. So this is my name, this is what I like, this is this. And so then the fact that Dolly came in and was like, I have to memorize my line and all of this stuff. And I'm like, that's kind of the same with Jean. She has to memorize.
The compare and contrast between mother and daughter. I thought that was...
she has to like memorize everything that she's been telling.
And her acting was pretty good.
Yeah.
Jean, that is.
But Jean later fantasizes about Sam watching her and Sydney, and I'm like,
wait. I thought that was Sam's dream.
Yeah, that was.
Was it?
Yeah, because then they cut to him, and he's in the therapy session, and we see his eyes.
Oh, okay.
And then she asks him about it, and I think that's what he was. Yeah.
Huh.
Well, no, he was fantasizing that when he was having sex with Emily.
That he was. Yeah.
Oh, okay, yes, because I was just about to bring up them having sex. Okay, that makes so much more sense.
Yeah.
But like, why would he? Does he know that Diane is Jean then?
Well,
That's
you know
questionable.
what? You know what I think it is?
Yeah.
He's into women
Both
like
of them?
Sydney,
So
and
they're controlling.
and they're so similar, and he even said he thought that Jean was hot. So I think that's what it is.
You guys are good. You guys are so good. You guys are cracking the code. Oh my god, I'm learning so much from you guys.
Yeah, because I thought that too. I was like, he thinks Jean is hot. Jean and Sydney are alike. Okay. They're very controlling, and the fact that Jean has role played, you know, Sydney's kind of character type of thing, probably just turned him on.
And he's just using Emily right now as like a vessel to get his little kick going on.
Yeah.
Like,
and even in their therapy sessions, Jean's controlling. She makes him do things that...
And he's always questioning. And
but he does it.
Because he's always been controlled by Sydney.
Yeah.
Okay, this makes so much more sense. Because I was like, what is going on here? Like, does Jean want to make him jealous? That's why I was thinking.
I think she does.
So that's why I thought it was like the fantasy. She's just like fantasizing Sam, watching her. Yeah, okay. Everything makes so much more sense now. Thank you guys.
Obviously, she's so good at controlling that she's gotten into Sam's mind, and she's just his therapist.
Oh my god.
Oh, and Lindsay M says it was Sydney, the knocking on the door.
Okay. Does she think that, or?
I think it's a prediction, but
Okay.
Okay.
Was it Nancy, her mom? No, I was thinking that if it was Allison's mom, but she doesn't want to stay with her mom, right?
Yeah.
No, she said she's not ready to talk to her mom.
But Jean wants to talk to her mom to let her stay.
There was an interesting scene with Jean boxing again, because we saw her boxing previously, and she comes across this guy, and one of the trainers says, Sawgraves, get back to work, stop talking. And Sawgraves is actually the last name of Melissa, who we learned of. We have not seen Melissa, but we know there was a case between Melissa and Jean. So is this like her brother?
I think so, because he was saying something like, oh, my sister is, I think, either just got out of the hospital or she's still in or is about to get out. It's definitely his sister, or his brother, her brother, and we've seen this scene a couple times now. We just never knew why we saw her boxing. But now it
Other
clicks.
than getting like that crazy frustration out. I thought it was therapeutic for her, but there's a reason, because of her brother. Ooh.
Yeah.
But again, I feel like Sawgraves, the brother, doesn't know.
Yeah, I was just about to say,
so.
like, how your like sister was in a case with Jean, so I'm really surprised. She's just that good.
And they call her Diane, so she's obviously going by her other name.
Persona,
That's so messy.
Yeah. Maybe the brother just never actually physically saw or met her, and that's why she can get away with it.
We definitely need to rush this soon because we need to wrap up. Is there any questions in the chat?
Well, can we quickly talk about the fact that Michael went to the coffee shop to meet Sydney? And then, do you guys remember also the picture that she took? That she supposedly deleted?
And she did it!
Yeah, and she did it. And I knew
it's gonna blow up.
Yeah.
It's gotta blow up.
I feel like that might blow up her cover.
Yeah.
Especially because she gave the note and everything to Michael. Sydney gave that, like, oh, here.
Follow us on Instagram.
Yeah, follow us on Instagram. And then right the next second, she posted that picture. And I was like, ooh.
But I was like, does Sydney know Michael? She knows Michael's name.
So.
She knows Michael's name because of the whole, when Jean was passing out, she's like, oh, call Michael. Tell him I'm going to be late. But
he didn't give her his name there at the coffee shop. So I don't think that she knew that was
Unless
him.
she saw his card, like Michael. His, like, unless he paid with cash. I don't remember. Oh, no, he did pay with cash. Never mind.
See, I honestly don't think that Michael's going to care. Like, I don't know. Like, I think if he does find out, like, I don't know. I just don't think he would really care that much about it.
Yeah. I would have thought he would recognize Sydney from the video from like a couple episodes ago when Jean was watching it in her desktop and stuff. So I would have thought that he would recognize her, or even the name of the band.
Yeah.
Or even her name. She's role-playing as her.
Yeah.
He definitely has an idea, and then he gives her the coffee, and this was a really tense scene between Michael and Jean. I was about to say Jane. So, like, I was like, oh my goodness, like, ugh, but nothing happens. Nothing happens.
And what's up with the slap in the shower?
Other than, like, they go in the shower together.
Don't ever go to my coffee shop again.
Oh, no.
I don't get her.
Oh my god. This is, my goodness, but guys, we're gonna find out soon. Like, we can go home and watch it right now, but should we get
not ready.
Should we get into predictions? Like, what do you guys think is gonna happen? Do you have an idea?
She's gonna get caught. I think it's gonna happen this season, and I think it's gonna be, I don't know. I think Sam's gonna find out. I think that Michael's gonna find out. I think it's going to be a whole huge mess. Yeah, I think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I think Sam's going to snap.
Yeah. And I feel like it might happen maybe like the next episode just so that they could give the season finale kind of more as to how people kind of react to it, maybe.
Yeah.
Unless they leave us with cliffhangers.
I think they will. Yeah, I think it's going to be a cliffhanger, but something's going to blow up, and we're going to want to watch season 2.
I just heard it. I just know it's going to be crazy, and I'm so ready for it.
I've heard from so many people, too. It's like, it's really intense, and I was like, don't tell me.
Is there anything else in the chat before we sign off?
We don't have anything else in the chat. So here's your chance, guys. If you have any questions, type fast.
Yeah, if not, then we'll go ahead and type them, leave a comment, and we'll try to get to it next week because we're super excited. But Queens, why don't you tell everyone where they can find you on social media?
I'm Rachel Goodman. You can find me on Twitter or Instagram at Rach Goodman or on Facebook at Rachel Ann Goodman. I also do the Young and the Restless show weekly on Sundays.
And I'm Karina Vargas. You guys find me everywhere on Twitter and Instagram at KarinaXVRGS.
Yes, Gypsies, thank you guys so much for tuning in once again. Follow me on all social media platforms at OllieJamer and tune in on Tuesdays on the Popcorn Talk Network for Marvel movie news. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Gosh.
One more show.
One more.
The
Bye,
anticipation.
guys.
I know, bye.
Bye. Thanks for joining us.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz
you later, Gypsies.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.